Quick.
He hasn't started it. Oh, he hasn't started it? No.
Good. Let's shake your hand.
Okay.
Kathy's in need of
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Good to see you. Good to see you too. Doing well? Very well.
Ruth, do we have to be okay to go ahead? Or you gonna want to wait?
Yeah, I think we should start.
All right, then we'll
And
start.
as everybody comes in, you know, there's places for them.
Okay.
Well, let's begin. We'll declare the meeting open and welcome. I'm Jim Walsh. I'm one of the co-chairs along with Kathy Richardson and Gail Murphy. We are honored and thrilled to be part of this. It's a great endeavor. We're absolutely delighted with the panel, members of the commission. This is a great group of people. And, you know, I think one thing for sure that will happen is you'll get to know each other better, which is good for the community. And we'll all benefit from that, and myself included. And let me just, a couple of logistical things. First, we are being videotaped. One of the real foundational aspects of this commission will be transparency. We want to be open, completely open to the public, and invite as much comment and create as many stakeholders as we possibly can. So this is videotaped. It will be uploaded to our website, the Consensus website, which you'll see if you haven't already. We'd like to start beginning that way and continue all the way through. Off the script, I'd like to thank Rob Simpson and Kathy Murphy and their organizations for all the work that they've done to staff us up on this. And so, without any further ado, let me just ask everyone, let's go around the room, introduce ourselves, what we really do in our real jobs, and I'll begin with Kathy on my left.
Okay, well, I'm a lifelong learner of the Onondaga County area. 72 years here, except for a couple of educational, well, I guess, sprints aside. I don't know if one's called education because I went out west to get a master's degree in skiing, but I started teaching. I was a high school math teacher. I went to law school. I spent my entire legal career with John Kennedy King. I have now been retired 10 years, and the newest fact is I just took over as chairman of the board of SRC. So I am just, will never move from this company. I'm going out feet first, get planted feet first.
My name is Neil Murphy, past president of the State University of New York College of Environmental Science and Forestry. And I would say I'm partially retired. I carry the title of Senior Fellow for Environmental and Sustainability Systems for the State University of New York. Prior to my previous position, I worked for O'Brien here for 30 years. This is my community. So.
I'm Larry Bousquet. I'm also a lifelong resident of Syracuse, New York. I'm an attorney with the firm of Bousquet Holstein, and also very involved with and the current president of the Gifford Foundation. And was the chair of a study a few years ago on organization.
We talked about that this morning.
Most important, I'm Dennis Navy. Most importantly, I was one of Larry's classmates in high school. Long time ago. I've been a lifelong resident of Syracuse. I'm currently practicing family medicine in Cicero, New York, with Family Medicine Associates of Central New York. In other capacities, I serve as a business agent for Teamsters Local 1149. I'm also chairman of the Physician Teamster Alliance. I'm currently president of the Greater Syracuse Labor Council and president-elect of the Onondaga County Medical Society.
And you do practice medicine? What are you afraid in? Oh, wow.
I do work nights and weekends.
Oh, okay.
I'm Amelia Abdi. I'm CEO of Sticky Furniture, and our family has been in Syracuse since 1974. I love this community, and I'm involved in many aspects of it. I've served as the trustee trustee of the State University of New York, and my first official job on SUNY was to install me the president.
Did a nice job of me.
And he did a great job. I want to say how proud I am of the leadership of this organization, and I'm looking forward to working with everyone. I work with Rob Simpson on the CEO board, and again, thank you for all your efforts.
My name is Sharon Owens. I'm the CEO at Syracuse Model Neighborhood Facility. We are on the south side of the city of Syracuse, better known as the Southwest Community Center. Since graduating from Syracuse University almost 30 years ago, I chose to make Syracuse my new home. So I've been here for about 30 years in various capacities in the community, and I am thrilled to be here.
Hi, I'm Ann Ruby with Onondaga County, the Onondaga County Executive's Office. I tried to leave Syracuse a couple times and came back both times. Syracuse is home, and it's a pleasure to work with all of you. Thanks.
My name is Chad Ryan. I am a funeral director by trade. I'm here because I am chairman of the Intergovernmental Services and Consolidation City Council.
I'm Kevin Schwab. I'm the Catholic Interstate CEO, and really here to help in a communications capacity.
Good afternoon, Andrew Maxwell. I'm a Syracuse native, Corcoran High School graduate. Worked for the city of Syracuse since 2006 in its Community Development Department and Bureau of Planning and Sustainability. I'm now director of the Syracuse Onondaga County Planning Agency, which is our newly constituted joint city-county planning department. So I work for both the mayor and the county executive, and serving on this commission is appointed by the mayor. Thank you for having me.
I'm Kathy Murphy. I'm the current board chair for Syracuse 2020. I'm not a Syracuse native, but am happy to call Syracuse my home for the last 20 years.
I'm Mark Olson, mayor of Fayetteville, born and raised in Fayetteville. Besides being the mayor of Fayetteville, I'm the president of the Onondaga County Mayors Association. I'm on the board of directors for the Fayetteville Manors Little League and the Fayetteville Farmers Association. I'm also, speaking of not having a lot of time, a battalion chief for the fire department. So giving back to the community is something that's very important to me and my family. I'm one of 7 children that grew up in Fayetteville, and I'm sad to say I'm the only one that stayed. I have brothers and sisters all throughout the country, but I also love living in this community and being part of something that I think is quality of life is second to none in this area. So.
Mark Nicotra, I'm the supervisor in the town of Salina, where I've lived my whole life. I spent 11 years at WSTM as a photojournalist. This is my 13th year in town government, 7th as supervisor. Served on several committees and boards. Most recently was appointed to the airport committee. So I was happy to be part of this. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Melanie Littlejohn, Regional Executive Director with National Grid, responsible for all things customer and community. As you can hear my accent, you realize that I am not born and raised in central New York, but just south of here in New York City is the place that I call my first home. This is now my second home, and certainly thrilled to be part of this commission.
I'm Darlene Kerr, former president, chief operating officer of Niagara Mohawk Power Corporation. I am a Syracuse native and was very fortunate to go to work for a company that was headquartered in Syracuse. As a matter of fact, it was the last Fortune 500 company headquartered in Syracuse. Spent 30 years there, worked in virtually all aspects of the electric and gas business, and was very involved with the community throughout that. I retired in 2003, and 3 years later became the president of the Greater Syracuse Chamber of Commerce, where I spent 4 years focused on building collaboration among the leadership of the community and focused on consolidating business and economic development organizations. I was fortunate to find the partner in Rob Simpson, and we very successfully, with the help of people around this table, very successfully consolidated the Metropolitan Development Association and the Greater Syracuse Chamber of Commerce. I am very excited about the work we're about to do. I think excellent leadership and a really great commission, and I look forward to working with all of you.
I'm Steve Meyer. I'm the CEO of Welsh Allen over in Skaneateles. I am not a native of New York. I grew up in Michigan, but my wife and I have raised our kids here, and we have deep interest in the region. Actually, both my parents grew up in New York City, so how we ended up in Michigan is another story for another time. But I have a deep interest in the work of this commission because my feeling is that when the community is really strong and capable, our business can thrive more easily. And realizing where I am from, Michigan, and recognizing the challenges that that state has faced, and watching that unravel, they're a little bit like the canary in the coal mine, in a sense. And I think what's really interesting about this commission is that it's coming together at a time when we have time to get in front of the challenges and actually adapt and become a little more agile in how we deal with some of the challenges. So I'm really excited about it as well. And thanks, Rob, for thinking of me.
Twisting your arm.
Twisting my arm.
Everybody's gone around introducing themselves, so.
So is it my turn?
It is your turn.
Timing is impeccable.
Hi, everyone, Dee Gonzalez. I get a prize for finding parking, right? I guess I'm a citizen activist, right? I've been engaged in civic issues most of my life because of my parents and then because of myself. I'm a lifelong resident of the city of Syracuse. Went to 12 elementary schools in the city, went to Blodgett and went to Corcoran. Then went off to SUNY Binghamton and started my career in higher ed, which I am now celebrating my 38th year as an administrator in higher education. I did a stint at school board. I did a couple of stints as city council president, and was engaged with this conversation with 2020 from the very beginning. So I'm really happy to come back to the table and continue this conversation. I think my two claims to fame around this issue: I was able, as city council president, to consolidate two unions within the fire department, one that existed at the airport and one that existed within the city of Syracuse, and combined after a couple of years of a lot of guess what? One union disappeared and we eliminated one to the benefit of everyone. It got to the point where we found the win-win for everybody. And the other is the Citizens Academy. Chucky and I partnered on the Citizens Academy in 2005, I want to say. I was very private about my collaboration with the Citizens Academy as the Dean of University College, because I didn't want it to be seen as a political ploy on my part, because it was also a re-election year. And so we partnered on this. University College is one of the major sponsors of Citizens Academy. And our goal for Citizens Academy was to educate the citizenry around the issues of shared services and the complications that exist because of the many, many layers of government that we have. So that's me, Dee Gonzalez.
Follow that one, yeah.
Come back and follow. I am Pat Kilmartin. I'm very, very happy to be here today, in part on behalf of Onondaga County and the county legislature. I was born and raised in the city of Syracuse, now live in the town of Onondaga, and have for a number of years. I've served in different private and public capacities, first as a prosecutor in Bill Fitzpatrick's administration for Onondaga County, then subsequently in the private practice of law, in business, in a small private real estate company, and then also as a county legislator for the past 7 years. And I've also had short stints serving in a town capacity on zoning boards and assessment boards. So hopefully I can bring a cross-section of public and private experience to this panel, and I'm very, very happy to be a part of it.
I'm Rob Simpson, the president of Center State CEO. Thing that many people may not know about me, I'm the third of 4 generations of Simpson men that have lived in Syracuse at one point in our lives. My grandfather worked at GE in the 1950s when there were 22,000 people employed out there. Fun fact, I'm not a landlord of the very building that he worked in. It's a little strange. I had spent 4.5, almost 5 years growing up here as a young child. And now my son, Ben, who's 21 months, is the first of those 4 generations to actually be born in the city, and to have this on his birth certificate. So this is, we talked a lot this morning about why many of us are involved in this work, and it really is for those successive generations to ensure they have the opportunities that we've had. So I'm just really, in 11 years in Syracuse, I've been a part of a lot of committees and commissions, and this one, Kathy and I are privileged to get to be the staff support for all of you. But this is a tremendous group of people, as good as any coalition of thought leaders in the community that I've seen assembled on the topic in the last 11 years, and I'm excited about it.
Go to Bill Byrne, who joined us a little bit late.
Yes, I'm sorry to be late. Bill Byrne, I grew up on the west side of the city. I'm a product of the Syracuse City School District and Christian Brothers Academy. In terms of public service, probably the most significant thing I've done was chair of the Syracuse Neighborhood Initiative for Jim for 3 years, and we raised quite a bit of money on that, and really got a good look at the changes that need to be made in this community. Right now, I serve on the Salvation Army Board. I've kind of cut back a little bit. I'm not doing as many things as I used to. But the most important thing is I'm still working for Byrne Dairy. I'm getting close to retirement, but you know, we've been able to grow our business, and we really we've increased our employment. We've opened plants. We have a plant that we're building in Cortland Village, just south of Cortland. Right now, it's about half done. Well, almost 3/4 done. Hope they'll be able to produce product there within 3 months. We're going to live and die in New York State. That's where we are. We're committed to, the plants that we have and the business that we've been able to develop. And I think the interesting thing is that the dairy industry across New York State is thriving. We have new plants all over the place. We have Chobani, which is an amazing story. And we think that what's really happening is that the excellent transportation that we have, the kind of reasonable cost structure that we can put together and run our plants on, is working. And we obviously, and yet we know that there are a lot of issues, especially related to costs in New York State, that we've got to change. We've got to compete across the country. We've got to be efficient. So I'm pleased to be asked to serve on this committee.
And I'm, as I mentioned, Jim Walsh. I'm born and raised in Syracuse, New York. Like Mark, I had 6 brothers and sisters. Unfortunately, all mine stayed here. chose to run for public office. But public service really is a tradition in our family. It's sort of it was never demanded, but it was sort of expected that we would all do our part to help our community. So I was delighted to be asked to participate in this group. As you probably remember, I served on the Syracuse County Council as a district councilor, like Chad, 3rd district. Served as city council president, like B, for several years, and then was elected to the House of Representatives, where I had the great honor of serving this community for 20 years. And it was a labor of love all those years. So now I'm out of politics. I'm still working full time with this amazing law firm and headquartered in, I'm not sure where we're headquartered actually. We have 48 offices on 4 continents, 20 plus in the US, and I think the seat of the business is wherever Pete Kalis is, who's the global managing partner. He's sort of like the Wizard of Oz. You never know where he is, but it's a fabulous business. I provide advice and counsel to our strategic clients all over the world. And it's a lot of fun. It's a lot easier than what I used to do. So here we all are. Everybody's got their sleeves rolled up, and we're ready to get to work. We only have one person that isn't here, Donna Desiato, who is the superintendent of ESM schools, and everybody else is here. And so you can see who your partners are in this. And with that, I'll ask Mark Olson, our host, and the mayor to
say a few welcoming remarks.
Well, welcome everybody. It's truly a privilege to serve on this committee with you and welcome you to the Village of Fayetteville. For some of you who haven't been here, this is our village hall. The village was formed in 1844. So if you look at some of your charts, and you'll see in here, it was formed one of the earlier villages that was formed in Onondaga County. We have 4,400 residents and 1,900 households. And actually, since 2000, we are growing. The village has seen a resurgence with all our new businesses and new housing. And we're one of the few in Onondaga County that has seen an increase. So we're very proud of that. Fayetteville was named after the Marquis de Lafayette, which a lot of you have heard, Lafayette and Fayetteville, Arkansas, a few others. We're very proud of that fact. Actually, a few years ago, I got to go to Paris and learn all about the Marquis. It was a very interesting trip. And the Syracuse mayor, Mayor Marvin, actually did the trip back in the early 50s or 60s. I can't remember the date, but it took him 2 weeks to get there on boat, 2 weeks to get back. Mine was a much shorter trip, but it was a very interesting thing. We have a few famous residents. Grover Cleveland was the president of the United States, not just once, but twice. He's the only president to ever do that. Also, he was the governor of New York, and the building that we're in is named after that, after Grover. Also, the women's suffrage movement, Matilda Jocelyn Gage, had her house and her museum is on Tennessee Street today. We're very proud of that. We are the birthplace of stately furniture, and their museum is in our village, and so we're very, very proud of that and all the work that they have done. The Erie Canal, really, and if you look at that picture, you'll see a mural of what Fayetteville looked like years and years ago. The Erie Canal really put Fayetteville on the map. You can see the boat going down there and the bridges and everything. We're very learning more and more about the history of the Erie Canal and trying to bring that back into what we do. And a lot of the projects that we've done in the village over the last few years are trying to showcase the Erie Canal, trying to make connections, trying to put people in that area so that they can learn more about this beautiful village. And as I said before, quality of life is our mission in the village of Fayetteville. We have 6 elected officials. Myself, I am the 50th mayor of the village of Fayetteville. I just found that out today. Counting down the board in our 169-year history. We have 4 trustees and a judge. So it's a very consolidated and small elected body. Every 4 years we're re-elected. We have 38 employees and close to a $5 million budgets. Our departments are the DPW, the fire department, rec, senior center, codes, court, clerk, and all our boards, planning, zoning, historic, tree commission, parks commissions, are all volunteers. No one is paid on any of those commissions. They do that because they love their community and they want to give back. When we talk about consolidation, and Kathy and I were talking about this, and you talk about cooperation and working with the municipalities, in 1985, 30 years ago, the villages of Fayetteville, Manlius, and Manoa merged their police departments. So it wasn't even a buzzword back then, but they looked at it and said, this is a good idea. 4 years ago, the 4 departments of the town of Manlius did a study about consolidating and doing the same exact thing and merging. We're working through that process, and we're looking at things. It's taking some time. As someone had said, there's a lot of layers of government, a lot of things. At the time, when we got the study done, it didn't make sense to do it financially, but we're still working on it. We now have a capital plan that we're working on, so we're always constantly looking at ways to get better and consolidate and turn more efficient. This building is a perfect example. The village hall used to be the court and the village clerk, and that was it. Today, we have the Town of Manlius Police Department here. The Chamber of Commerce for the Town of Manlius uses this building as their office. The Recreation Department, and then our codes, clerk, and my office is here. So we turned a building that was only being used by 2 different organizations, now being used by 6 different organizations. In 2004, and this is on, I'll end with this, and people talk about tax rates and they talk about efficiencies, and the reason I'm so glad to be on this committee is because as a village resident and a village mayor, I want to bring out what we really do. The tax rate in 2004 in the village of Fayetteville was $6.75. Today, 10 years later, it's $6.70. Okay, with a reduction of sales tax, with the increase of 300% in our pension cost and our health care cost. How do we do that? And that's why I'm excited to be on this committee, because I want to share what villages have done and what they're all about to be able to do that. And I think it's important that the committee realizes that it can be done, and there's ways to do it, and I'm very excited. So welcome to Fayetteville. Feel free after the meeting to please walk around and look at some of the pictures and some of the history in the building. There's a very nice picture of Grover Cleveland. There's a very nice thing on Matilda Jocelyn Gage in our boardroom, and then there's pictures throughout the whole building of the history of Fayetteville. So again, welcome and thank you for coming today.
But actually, I can't imagine a better segue to the answer of how we got here, both for literally and figuratively. I think this particular location, certainly the village of Fayetteville, is as good an example of the work that not only has been done, but the work that needs to be done on a go-forward basis. And I think our desire to host this meeting here today is to make that very clear reflection of the fact that there have been tremendous efforts at innovation and efficiency and improvements in service delivery at every layer of government in and around our city and our community over the course of the last 30 to 40 years. Certainly we've heard the mayor's story, we've seen other successful opportunities in other towns and villages. You know, certainly Clay comes to mind. We've had successes and we've had failures in these initiatives. But it hasn't kept our community from continually striving to do more. Over the last 4 years in particular, and one of the things that as a community leader I've been the most heartened by has been the way in which our city and county governments, both our mayor and our county executive, but our council and our legislature have come together to work on big issues together, merge planning departments and things that are significant steps towards better service delivery, which really is what we're here talking about today. We'd be remiss if we didn't mention the tremendous work and leadership that Kathy Murphy in Syracuse 2020 has done now for 20 plus years to keep the focus on, truly though, it deserves a lot of recognition because keeping focus on any issue for that long period of time requires sustained and dedicated leadership, but really to keep the focus on this issue. I don't care how well we do with any one effort to improve our governmental structure or our main streets or our downtowns or villages, our work is never done. And I think part of this commission here today is to continually push us and challenge us to find ways in which we can be more competitive, not just today, but into the future. And recognizing that we're operating in this wildly competitive global environment, but that we have a significant control over a lot of what happens in our own backyard. And that these conversations, as difficult as they may be, are really critical and fundamental to our success. A couple of years ago, we were fortunate enough to get engaged with the Brookings Institute. And Brookings has spent the better part of 2.5 to 3 years really in depth getting to know the Central New York community and our region, spent a lot of time doing data and research and analytics. And one of the most remarkable things that came out of that most recent work was really put a spotlight back on our need to continually improve in the areas of governmental efficiency. What they pointed out was that in our regional footprint, we have 4.52 units of local government for every 10,000 residents. The national average is 0.47, so we're 9x that national average. That is not a condemnation of any individual unit of government, any special district, all of which have been created for legitimate and good and real reasons and have served the community in many ways. But it is clearly, in the context of the sort of global economy, it is the type of thing that can't be ignored. And then I think what I've been so excited about my conversations with all of you have been about the fact that we have, there seems to be a community recognition and an honest dialogue going on about the fact that we don't want to sweep this issue under the rug. In fact, we want to be a community that distinguishes ourselves by taking these issues head on. And distinguishing ourselves in the state context, in the national context, in the global context, I think is really what it's all about, building a better community that is worthy of investment, and not only by business, but by individuals who want to be here. We were very fortunate early on in this work, thanks in large part to the work that 2020 did, to find a receptive ear with our state legislative delegation. And Senator DeFrancisco in particular, but also Senator Valesky, Assemblyman Magnarelli, who really challenged the sort of growing community coalition that wanted to take a real hard look at this issue, challenged us to prove to them that there was in fact a willingness amongst key community stakeholders to be serious and engaged on this issue over a sustained period of time. And John in particular, I think, challenged Kathy and I to bring back resolutions to them that demonstrated that our county legislature and our city council supported this activity. This wasn't going to be a fool's errand. In fact, that at the end, we might have some hope of having consensus and a chance for real and meaningful action. And that conversation really began, I guess, last year, just about 12 months ago, a series of dialogues with our council and with the legislature that were incredibly productive. And I think what came out of those dialogues was a recognition of two things. One, that We probably are not optimally aligned or structured. We're certainly not structured in any way that we would build for ourselves today if the slate were clean. And that we were collectively willing as community stakeholders with different perspectives to take a serious look at that. Our county legislature passed a resolution by a 17-0 vote. I only remember one other occasion.
Those are rare occasions.
Those are rare occasions. I can only remember one other. And our city council passed a resolution by a vote of 8-1, encouraging the creation of this commission, encouraging the state to provide financial support for this commission, and really, I think, launching us into where we are today. Senators DeFrancisco and Valesky held up their end of the bargain by providing a $250,000 member item, which will provide the sort of catalytic resources we need to begin our work. We know that that's not all the resources we'll need to complete our work, but we do have, we are launching this work with, with resources in hand. And then I think maybe perhaps most recently, watching the dialogue at the state level really push, I think, and embrace this concept of modernization. We heard in the governor's State of the State, in fact, highlighting the work that our community has done, in particular the mayor and the county executive, and showing that to the state as a real example for what communities can do who want to empower themselves and make progress. So we think that, as Kathy said many times this morning, the stars are aligned for some significant things, and it has been an ongoing dialogue in this community for many, many years, and we know even after we reach an endpoint for this commission, a set of recommendations, and perhaps even real and tangible action and progress, the conversation will sort of start all over again. The communities that are the best are the ones that renew themselves on a regular basis and then innovate, and they're committed to continuous improvement. And I think that's what I'm most excited by in all my conversations with each of you as we talk about the role of this commission was, is there that commitment from the towns and villages and from the mayor and the county executive and from the business community and from organized labor and from our academic leaders. And in every single one of those conversations, I have sensed that there is in fact that commitment. And I think that served us very well as we get started.
Neil was going to talk about the RFP and the process.
Before I get into that, we haven't recognized two people that contribute an awful lot to the groundwork here too. Dan Young, who's done an awful lot, Lori Black, it's equally done. So we thank both of you for this. One of the important things we have to do today, in your packet there's an RFP. And both Rob and Jim made reference to the consultant to get on board to support us in this activity. So what we would like to do is walk through that RFP and make sure that we, in preparing that draft, have covered all the items that you feel are important. And to make any changes that you think are appropriate. So maybe if I could kind of walk us through that. I don't think we have to review the background. A lot of that has been stated today, it's been stated in the past. But in terms of the scope of the consulting services, there really are three really important things that this consultant needs to do for us. The first is to collect the data that we need to take a look at, basically do the analytics that we need to have a solid background for us to help make some decisions, prepare reports that we need to distribute, and to advise and guide the commission on both the process, the procedures, best practices, and those kinds of things. Those are three very important elements. In addition, we've identified 7 critical areas where the consultant needs to provide support. And you can see each of those outlined. First of all, collaborate on the final project design. We have a preliminary project design, but we don't have the final project design. But for the consultant to help us in finalizing the project design. The second thing that was brought out to us this morning in an issue that we all knew is to come up with a solid communications plan. And so the second item is the management of communications and engagement. And there, in particular, the consultant will have to have expertise not only in classic communication, but also in the new domain of communication. It was outlined to us this morning that engaging in millennials is going to be very important because this is going to be their community. It already is their community, but it's going to be in the future stronger their community. And so coming up with expertise in developing, for example, social media that are necessary to make that connection, that's going to be very, very important. And the consultant has to help us develop this general strategy for public education, engaging public opinion, and all the messaging that's required. If we're weak on that, we can have the best possible plan, and frankly, that plan won't be going anywhere. Equally, the consultant will staff our meetings to have the expertise available at our meetings, and will also, whether they be full commission meetings or subcommittee meetings, the consultant will be responsible for maintaining an ongoing status, documentation, and status of the project that we're going to need as part of the process of communicating to others where we are in our deliberations. Next is the database decision tools. Again, this coming up with the appropriate analytics, extremely important, in mining the data. So the consultant will be required to complete a review of the current state of government in Onondaga County. There will be 19 towns, 15 villages, 1 city, and 1 county. They will have to come up with a comparative analysis of the cost of delivering services for each of those municipal districts, and that is not an easy thing, simply because data, cost data, and that kind of thing are different formats and that type of thing. So we really need a consultant that has expertise in having done this in the past to come to the table so we can try and put all those costs on the same basis to the extent we can. And that's going to take an awful lot of work. Equally, we need that consultant to develop the comprehensive listing of all municipal jurisdictions and special taxing districts and that kind of. We've got a pretty good list, but we need to make sure that list is comprehensive. But for each of those, we need to look very closely at the data that's developed in terms of governmental efficiency, areas where there may be governmental inefficiency, particularly important in pending areas of potentially fiscal instability. And we just saw the report from the Comptroller's Office that identified 3 particular governmental units that may be facing some difficulty in the not too distant future. We saw the article this morning in the Post-Standard specifically about the village of Marcellus and Mayor John Curtin and some of the issues that he's having to deal with. So we also need to look at zoning issues and suboptimal land use types of issues that may be as a result of having a decentralized kind of planning initiative. We need to understand some of the high costs of compliance that each of these jurisdictional units are facing, and regional disparities in delivery of service, cost of services, and the ability of those services to deliver successful community outcomes. So again, these coming up with the analytics and putting it in a format that all of us here and our community as a whole can better understand.
Darlene had a question.
Yeah, I do, and maybe it's in one of these, but should we also be looking for opportunities for technology application? You know, what comes to mind very often to me is tax collection and how that's a very labor-intensive manual process at this point in time, and it strikes me as one that would lend itself to information technology. You know, and because we have so many levels of government and technology is extremely expensive, a town couldn't afford to have on its own the best technology, whereas if we had some sort of a streamlined countywide process or some consolidation, technology then can become affordable and can certainly make a difference.
Excellent. We definitely need this in here.
Ann?
Is the idea of duplication of service interwoven through all of these without explicitly saying it
Yes.
right in one of these? Okay.
I think getting the data, we're going to understand where some of that duplication exists. The next thing, important thing, once we get the baseline information for us to understand where we truly are today, I think the consultant then has to share with us best practices that exist both within our area, but also, most importantly, what exists outside of our area. So a review of government modernization throughout the country, identification of where some of those best practices are. And then, as we identify the challenges that we're facing, what are some of those best practices that can best address some of those challenges? And then lastly, the review of options. There, the consultant needs to develop a series of recommendations involving service delivery, optimization of service delivery, and cost effectiveness of various options for service delivery across North Carolina. The consultant will develop those for us to review, and will be our feet on the ground, let's say, in coming up with those things. This all has to be data-driven. There's a weakness in other efforts that have been done like this that are not data-driven, because then they're not defendable. And so we really need to have decisions that are based on solid data. And estimates, for example, potential efficiency savings, estimates on service impacts, all of those kinds of things would be in the purview of the consultant to assist us. When we finally get to the bottom line, we need a delivery of a plan. And there needs to be synthesis of all of this. We'll use the consultant to help us to do that. And in the end, this commission needs to endorse the plan. And again, we'll be relying on the consultant to assist us in providing the necessary information to develop a plan and to endorse that plan. Consultant will assist us in finalizing concise draft proposal for consideration by elected officials after our review of that, elected officials in the public consultant.
Neil?
Yeah.
In path above, should we add to this list that starts out with shared service
Yeah.
agreements, add technology implementation?
Yep.
To that, yes.
So, if we, yeah.
Another question, and I don't see it captured in here specifically in terms of some of the deliverables, but are we putting a time frame around this?
Yeah, as we go through the RFP procedure, there is a specific timeline that's involved in this, and we'll cover that. I think we could just get as many ideas as we can on the scope of engagement with the consultant on that.
Neil, will we, as a commission, be working with the consultant to actually, I know it says this, determine the scope, that is, which services are in, which are out, and so forth?
Absolutely.
Okay. And are we just looking at the villages, towns, county, and city services, or will we be doing any part of school systems? And here I'm thinking the non-academic side of schools. The functions like facilities and transportation and finance and budget and, accounting, purchasing, IT, and so forth. Not touching the academic side of it, which I know is very much off limits and people really get excited about that. But will this commission, or perhaps we can spin it to another group, look at all of the non-academic functions of all of the school districts in the county and look for economies of scale and those things?
We've had a lot of internal discussion about schools, preliminary discussion. Whether the schools should be in the scope of this or should not be, and or should there be another commission that specifically deals with schools because of the uniqueness of some of their issues, the uniqueness of how they go about budgeting, how they deliver their services and all that kind of thing. I think there was a general sense of us when, at least preliminarily, that might be a better thing to do, but we need this, we need your input.
Neil, I think there, there are presently some initiatives that are being pursued by the county executive and the mayor that involve the school districts, especially in the technology area, information sharing area, and you consider that the school budgets collectively are almost the same as the budgets of the county and the city and the villages and the towns combined. I don't know why if there are opportunities there, why we wouldn't extend the scope to include those.
We are going to be talking about the administrative functions of government, and so there may be an opportunity when you talk about facilities, purchasing, IT, and so forth, to look at schools as well. If there's going to be an investment in technology, there'd be economies of scale by buying technology that the schools can use as well for those back office administrative functions.
What's the sense of others? Is there a general sense that we should address the issues with regard to administrative functions?
You know, I'm kind of new here. The county has a program called PeopleSoft, which I'm sure everybody's familiar with, and they offer it to the towns, and it's free for the towns, and so the city school district has their own, and the city was looking at doing it. It became if the city was going to do it, it would do it with the county and not with its own city school district. It's a pretty touchy situation there. I'm sure Pat could speak to it a little more firmly there, but.
You know, with respect to scope and piggyback on some of these comments, I think looking at the schools would be a great idea, because I think 10,000 feet, looking down, the school districts in central New York are experiencing the same problems that all of us are experiencing. And their models that were set up, decades ago, if not more than 100 years ago. And the demographics have changed substantially over the past 100 years. And you have school districts as kind of jigsaw puzzle with school districts throughout Onondaga County. And some of them are outstanding and work very efficiently at the very, very local level. But we're also finding that many of these small school districts are losing population. Demographics are changing. And we might have 3 school districts that are all struggling within a stone's throw of each other. It's similar to what is going on really with the Catholic schools that many dioceses are struggling with now. So I think analyzing schools and school administration, school costs will be very, very relevant. I think one other issue that might be relevant as we look at the best practices, we're trying to do apples to apples comparisons between heavily taxed counties in New York State, including Onondaga County, and other more modern municipalities and governments in the west or south. I think we have to look also at the relationship between local government and the state, because there might be idiosyncrasies between the relationship of local government and the state that are common in all counties in New York State, but very, very different than what we might find in Florida or Arizona, whether it be Medicaid or whether it be regulations for zoning and small items like speedies regulations and so on. I think if we don't analyze the relationship with the state, then we might not get at the end of the day an apples-to-apples comparison, to go back to Rob's analogy about, okay, why are we so heavily taxed in Onondaga County and related counties?
I was listening to the governor yesterday, and he was talking about the money that we spend on education and how concerned he is about the quality of education and its cost. And then he added, it's not a matter of money because we spend more money than any other state. Do you know if the governor is appointing a commission to look into that?
That I don't know.
Okay.
We can find out.
Because if that is the case, we would probably be duplicating efforts. But if it is not, I would think it's incumbent on us to consider that as a major aspect.
This is just my opinion. This is not the co-chair speaking, okay? I just wonder whether we have the resources to have the money to pay the consultant to do it. If we include the 18 plus 4 extra, so there's 22 sort of school districts that are involved in Onondaga County. And I just worry that if we take on that we'd either end up with it gives us such a huge bump that we're not gonna be able to come within our timeline to have everything done by the end of 2015. It just because it's so huge, and as Larry just said, is, combined resources that the towns, the cities, the villages, and the county are not as much as with the taxing entity and the monies that are raised in the school district. That's the only thing, I mean, having come from that's the one thing in my mind, I say, is if we throw in the mix the school districts, are we just fighting over so much? Hi, Donna, how are you?
Well, one thing we could do is we could put that down as an option in
Alternate.
Yeah, and I was just
Yeah,
gonna say, the RFP is blank to keeping things in or taking
Yeah.
things out.
Yeah.
So it, I think, can be a discussion that is held once you identify one, two, or
And
three
costs and
consultants,
everything. I
and
just worry the
relative
cost of
cost
which.
and time.
Yeah.
You can compare the values that way.
Even if it meant we somehow gained some insight, schools represent a large part of the tax.
No question.
It clearly needs to be studied. Whether it can be studied in the scope of this project maybe is a question, but if we had just some insight as a part of this, that could be leading as a part of our recommendation going forward, that would suggest, look, we found this here, there isn't any reason why, based on these things, that couldn't apply in these areas here. That would be something that.
It could be a cursory review in a very, very limited scope. Maybe we try to contain the costs and control the timeline. Maybe they could just comment on that in the RFPs.
Yeah.
And see if we can get, again, like a macro summary review of those issues.
And that goes back to your data-driven analysis, and I think it's key, because even if they just gave us the data, I agree with Darlene, we'll stay away from the teaching aspect, but get the data.
Yeah.
I'll give you a perfect example. We had to buy, I was telling Mark, we had to buy new computers next door for the fire trucks. I had 14 of them. We were going to a state contract, they were $900 a piece. I went to a school board meeting, they said, why don't you check with BOCES? They were $500 a year, that same one. We saved $6,000 on one item. I mean, it's out there.
Why don't we put in some creative language in the RFP? And maybe we can then, as Murph suggests, when we sit down with the consultant, we can go through this with the consultant in terms of what can they do within the scope of the budget that we have.
And to this point, we only have a finite amount of money, and we have a pretty big RFP here that was asking the consultant to do all kinds of things. Can we ask them to price these things separately to break down the bid? Because if, for instance, we need more money to do the real technical work that needs to be done, perhaps we could take out, not have the consultant do the management of communications and engagement, and instead, we've got resources that we can mobilize here locally to do that piece of it and not have a consultant doing that piece of it.
Yeah, Darlene, I agree with you. I think we first need to do is get a consultant on board that has experience, has a talent, all of that kind of stuff. Go through the process and then sit down basically with and review with the consultant the scope of work and what can be included and what maybe shouldn't be included. I think one of the things once we go through, and I've got the things down to work into this, we also need to decide whether or not we should have a committee of this commission that will, in essence, sit down and walk through that kind of thing with the consultant to drill down, who might have an interest on serving on that committee.
If I might just add, as a sort of point on the resource question, I just would commit collectively, and I view it, and Kathy and I and Dan Lord, we talk about this regularly, we view it as our role in this process to support and enable this commission to be successful. And that means not limiting thinking to the resources that we currently have today. I mean, we are always out looking into resources, Gifford Foundation, and others in the community and outside of the community. I've had conversations with national foundations that are very interested in what's happening here. that might be interested in investing. We'll constantly be looking for resources. So I would just hope that all of you throw the challenge of resources back to us, and I would not just, to work on together, but, if we're running up against something we want to do because the resources aren't there, push us to find the resources. Please.
So we get three things to take it away. One, we have to look at technology implementation, particularly how can that improve services, reduce costs. Second thing we need to look at is a relationship of local government to the state and the limitations and constraints that that provides. And then the third thing is to add in the potential add in the school district administrative functions into that. Those are the three things I've heard.
I would just encourage you, if you're gonna put in schools, to just put in education in general and its functions, because it's to think that you can create the same box, but just do it with, could you combine, you still have to have the same number of seats and things like that. Education needs to be really looked at in a much larger scope. We've been influenced by an agricultural era and an industrial era. We still have the same number of school days in a year, the same number of hours in a day, and those are decades old. So if they're gonna look at it, let's look at education being seamless, 24/7, just like an information age, just like a communication age. The fact that if we have buildings and structures, how could they be utilized in different ways to maximize tax dollars? How could they be utilized, and how could you organize differently or more effectively? So, because otherwise I think what we try to do is say, well, if you just have the same thing, but there could be one superintendent for these X numbers, that's really trying to build the same paradigm, just with moving the seats on the Titanic. And I would encourage us not to rearrange the seats on the Titanic, but to say, let's just build a new ocean liner.
Right, and see, and this is what I'm saying, I think this needs to be a separate commission and everything, because if our ultimate goal in the end is to really have a referendum that goes to the people, Jim just said, how many straws can we put on the camel's back before it collapses? And I just don't want something that is so huge and so important to our community, like education, to be the thing that might stop us from really getting what I'm calling streamlined government together. So, yeah.
And I think the counterbalance to that, and Tom makes a very good point, we can perfect what we're doing now and have done for the last 100 years, whether it's in education or in government, but that doesn't ask the fundamental question of whether we're doing the right things. And that's true whether it's, and what Donna's doing in her district is reinventing the things that you need to do in education, and that thinking also applies in the delivery of government services. So the question, so if it's just an efficiency study based on all the services that we're currently delivering, and we aren't asking the question, what should we be delivering, then I don't think we have the proper scope.
Well, I don't see us as just looking what exists. I'm thinking about the kids, the grandkids, the next generation. I'm talking about the future. This is what I think our commission should be doing, is planning for the future. So that we shouldn't be just trying to take what exists and doing it. We should be really thinking about how does the next generation want to come to this community, want to stay in this community because of how we've streamlined our government. And Kathy Murphy has given me so many things to read that I'm blurry-eyed, and I haven't read a good mystery in ages since I said yes. But it amazed me that when every single city, county, whatever did some kind of streamlining across the United States that we have studies for, it maybe didn't necessarily save money, but everyone had economic growth, immediately had economic growth. And that's what we care about, is having something that in the end, as far as I'm concerned, is we go to the people and say, this is for the next generation. We're gonna be seen as an innovative community, a region that you're gonna wanna come and open your businesses in, our kids wanna stay in. So I don't wanna be just reshuffling chairs. I didn't say yes for that.
I think that we need to really pay attention to the regional disparities that exist based on what we're gonna learn. And we know education is gonna come up with a big, big red bullseye on it. That begins to open the door for the next phase. I mean, that's kind of how I see it. I mean, the elephant is big enough. And so how much of this elephant can we as a commission chew? I think we will begin to open the door, Donna, for the next level of conversations around this, right? If we do a good job about figuring out the regional disparities, and to me, it's more about the impacts, not the outcomes, right, of those regional disparities, then we'll have no choice but to say one of the next steps is what you said.
I think without question, because I think it ultimately it has to be discussed. It would be, I think, a great conversation as a state to be looking at, so why not take the lead in that? But it may come as part of the equation in a series. You know, it's like what Marcus said, that if you look at the fact that there are solutions, if we think about it in a metropolitan concept with interdependencies. Right now, we think about it in urban, suburban, and rural, in silos, and those interdependencies only exist if someone is creative enough to reach out and say, let's work together. For the most part, those structures were all created independently, and as a result, they are very more costly, and they don't tend to necessarily build on each other's resources in a way that allows us to really get to some of the things that would move us forward as a metropolitan area. Instead, they sort us and separate us. So I think it can definitely be part of the conversation, whether or not will come up, because there's so much legislation, so many laws that exist around school districts, but I think we can start to explore it so we get to the creativity. My only comment is that let's get to the creativity beyond what was created in the 18 and 1900s in structures that ultimately no longer serve us well in 2014 and beyond. They just don't, you know, and not in their time framework or in the way in which we're legislated to be, you know, entities.
So is there a consensus that we need to definitely move into education, and we would follow Rob's guidance, which is let's get it in here. Our responsibility is try and find the money to follow.
Can I just, sorry, go ahead, Ann. I'm sorry.
I think in the process of hiring a consultant, a lot of what they're going to tell us about best practices, education will emanate out of whether we need that in or out. When you talk about advancing this community in a metropolitan sort of way, I don't think you ever get there unless you talk about school districts because of the huge taxing, tax drain on all of us. So when we bring that consultant in, I'm fairly positive that all of them will want to talk about education in its relation to all that we're doing. So I wouldn't want to limit ourselves now until we hear what they have to say in return for what we're going to be buying from them.
Can I just add also, I'm sitting here because I'm interested in getting to the meat of the matter to move us along. And for the credibility of this process in this group and the product that we present in a year, 18 months, how could it not include something as, at least the raw data and the recommendations going forward for something as large as how we educate our children?
So again, we have consensus on that, we're going to include education.
And do we have consensus from a technical point of view, indeed, that because we don't exclude school districts, we're okay?
I think we have.
On the RFP, is everybody in agreement with that?
I think we should be, I'm here, we should be even a little more explicit about it.
Yeah, I think. Okay, so you
Well, I
want
think the consultant would come back and say our school districts.
So for the purposes of amending the RFP with the hope of getting a motion, tools should include a comprehensive listing of all municipal jurisdictions and special tax and government, quasi-government agencies, and school districts in Onondaga County. Is that?
Or including.
Or including, correct. All municipal jurisdictions, including school districts. Does that hit it for everybody?
Yeah.
Okay, and then if I can just keep going to get amended everybody's comments. to address Darlene's, we will add shared service agreements and technology implementation going forward.
Technology as
As a
being,
separate.
as a separate
Correct.
bullet
Yeah.
there, and before that,
And
indeed, the opportunities for application of technology.
Okay.
And then we want to include the relationship with local government and the state.
The states, right.
And any limitations and constraints.
And we want to include.
No one's gonna tell John DeFrancisco that I recommended that, right? Can I just take a camera for a few minutes?
So Patrick, I'm trying to find the best place to put that.
What?
A full range of, no.
Kathy, can I have a suggestion? We
Yeah.
know what the items are.
Yeah.
We can work
Yeah.
how best to put it into.
We'll redraft and circulate out that one electronically.
As long as we can get it all.
ASAP.
Yeah, just so I'm clear, so are we suggesting that we're gonna do the same level of study and analysis of school districts as we are going to do in the areas the commission was originally designed to develop?
I don't think
No.
that we have
We don't have
qualified people here to talk about the academic side of school districts. I was suggesting the non-academic side. And when I look, for instance, at any school district, but in particular the city school district, the superintendent of the city schools and that school board, they're dealing with so much. And, being asked to transform the academics and improve performance there, yet they're responsible for all of these other functions, which I think they probably are not qualified to handle. All of the purchasing facilities, transportation, construction, et cetera, I've often thought that what if the city of Syracuse took all those functions and let the educators and the academic professionals focus strictly on academics and what needs to be done there.
I think what was proposed is largely the administrative functions.
Yeah, and I can simplify it so that you don't have to go to that extent of the study, but and I fortunately have two previously serving board members that I'm familiar with in my presence. The reason why that typically is not is because the education law with regard to the construction of buildings, the purchasing, and all of that is very different than what the city government, and so that's really, those are very specialized areas under education law.
State law.
Yes, well, education law as well, because remember, the regions and the commissioner of education are the governance of the school districts. So there's both state law, but there's also education law. And so you can't really commingle the two and come out with one office that's gonna somehow handle all of that. So I think that's not gonna be as simple as one might think. There's many, many laws that have to do with those explicit functions. Now, having said that, are there other things though that between the municipalities and like the purchasing of computers, transportation functions that could be looked at in ways that can provide the services as long as those laws are being observed? Yes. That's where I think we would leave that open-ended for a consultant to be able to take a look at. But I don't know that you'd have enough funding in this particular area, actually, to Steve's point, to actually study school districts. That's a major study in and of itself. It truly is.
Why don't we reflect the input we have and get another copy of the RFP out to you, let you respond to that and see if it's appropriately captured information in the scope.
If I could suggest, what may be the first part of the study is, what are the functions between the municipalities, among and between, along with the school districts in those municipalities that could actually be more cost-effective or efficient, or doing things that are, stop doing things that are redundant or that duplicate each other's efforts, and what efforts in that nature could we find in order to come to a different regional kind of perspective. That may be another way to look at it.
your language in here now in section D might be right on point, because it says this tool should include comprehensive listing of all municipal jurisdictions, special management districts, other governmental, quasi-governmental units, and a summary overview. So that might be right on point. We're not going deep in the weeds on education, but a listing of the school districts and a summary overview of the services they provide. Again, kind of a macro view.
Right.
of the
And I think ultimately we envision that the commission will at some point prioritize just for a timeline. You know, what do we want to do first, second, third, fourth? Just to start. You know, we're not going to be able to start all the parts at once. So, you know, how do you want to order it? What do you view as the most critical parts to start with?
We're all plowing roads, or not roads, we're all plowing parking lots. We're all, you know, removing trash. We're all, you know, in other words, there are functions that could be looked at from a much more regional perspective, and might those services be the ones that would create more of an interdependency and a cost effectiveness because of the purchasing power, because of the way in which the machinery or the equipment that's needed, and who can, you know, where it's located, who's maintaining it.
We're gonna have another shot at this, because as soon as we bring the consultants in,
Right.
that's really going to really refine the services.
Right.
So this is really to make sure that we get the right people, the right qualifications, that kind of thing. They generally understand what we want them to do, so that we can actually get an estimate for those services. And when we're likely going to get a final 3 or final 2, depending upon the responsiveness to this. We get them in, that's when we really refine the scope. So we're going to have another shot at it. I think we've gotten a sense of the commission in terms of how we should modify this preliminary product that we have.
You know, we're just talking about city, county, and like that, but if you look at the slides, these are part of the slides that we used this morning at TNR. If you look at the one right in the first page, and you look at what we're talking about, we're talking 19 towns, 15 villages, 1 city, 1 county, 18 school districts, 16 police departments, 55 fire departments, 1,300 special services, 177 drainage districts, 143 water districts, 34 zoning ordinances, and 34 subdivision. That's what we're talking about, okay? I mean, and now we're gonna add school districts, but we're not talking about a handful here. We're talking about the way I add 1,817 governmental units. So there's gonna be a lot there. And I guess in the back of my mind, and I'm now you're converting me over, but in the back of my mind, I keep saying, okay, how much time do we have before we put ourselves, it's obsolete because we just took too long, and people are, our expectations and all that. But I'm willing to, let's see what the consultant says and see what the kind of information it's gonna take, and so I'm all on board with this one.
We better wrap this discussion up.
Yeah.
In 5 minutes, because we've got a lot of other things we have to take a look at. But in terms of procedures, our procedures.
So, you know, just into the weeds of just ensuring we have an open, fair process.
Yeah.
Send the proposal to Rob. Questions, there's a due date, but the questions shouldn't be open-ended time, there should be a concise time frame for questions. So that people can submit questions to Rob within the time frame. And then Rob could in turn send out all inquiries, the questions that were asked.
A week before the deadline, and what we would typically do in an RFP situation is any question we would receive, we would type an answer to. We would provide that answer to every person who indicated they had an interest in responding to the RFP.
I think that language should probably be in the.
Be more explicit on what your suggestion. I just think we need a motion.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that relative to procedures, are there any other questions? There being none, I agree with Rob. Could we have a motion to accept the scope of services, the RFP procedures for the purpose of going out and soliciting inappropriate consultants?
As they go from the
As amended.
questions of the consultant, bring the consultant in, however you guys want to move forward to do a final selection. But I guess the idea being not a long period of time before there's a final selection of the consultant.
I think our thought process was that folks were amenable having a small subcommittee of this group who would work with staff to review those responses, determine a short list and present those recommendations back to the full committee sometime in the middle to end of March.
Is there an interest right now of those who want to serve on that subcommittee? That way? Good. Thank you. Next item.
Nice job, Neil. Catherine is up next. Goals of the commission.
All right, but we really don't have any specifics here. We want to get your input. We did a great presentation. It was just fun this morning in TMR. And you have some of the slides, but not all of them from it. I would suggest that, I think Lori told us that maybe tomorrow it'll be up on our website.
So this one, the one for TMR was just a one-pager, this is a two-pager, so these are all the slides.
Oh, these are all the slides?
Yeah, those are all the slides, but yes, it will be up.
On it. But what I really want to go to is to the end of what it was. And the last part of the presentation really was Neil about talking about our mission and everything. And so can you just sort of reprise your,
Sure.
yeah. Because I think it really, it sort of got everything where we're going on this one. At least as we see it. Now, then we want you to tell us what you think we really need to do.
Basically, what we told both at TMR, we told the group at TMR, and we told basically the editorial board, the time is now. And we gave the justification why the time is now. And in the context of what will consensus do, we laid out a mission in terms of what our mission would be. First is to shape the future. And clearly at TMR, there was general agreement that a vision had to be created. You can't go through the mechanics of what has to be done in the future without some type of vision for the future. And part of that vision is how local government in Onondaga County, the city, can be more effective and more efficient in delivering services. You know, we emphasize that part of our mission is to gather solid data. This is not to be, these things are not to be developed without having appropriate analytical information to support the recommendations. And then lastly, to come up with those recommendations that are necessary to support the vision that we develop by this commission. And those were the three big things in the mission. And then we went through the mechanics, in essence, of what would be required. I don't think we have to review that because we've discussed some of those mechanics in the context of the scope of work. And then we focused on making the recommendations. What is the scope, the general scope of the recommendations? Recommendations that strengthen and streamline the structure and operations of local government, improving the effectiveness, of which cost is a factor, but not the only factor of effectiveness. Facilitating mergers, acquisitions, consolidation, and partnering. So those are the three general areas that we focused on in terms of the recommendations that we need to do. And then really focused very, very strongly on building consensus. Building consensus. That we needed to engage the community as a whole to find common ground. Find common ground. We were very clear that unless we could find common ground, this would go nowhere. So finding common ground and consensus for action. And we really focused heavily on also that this was different than previous studies because this is going to be focused on action. It's just not a study. Action has to be part of the outcome of this. And that's what distinguishes us. It's said that this is going to be a 12-month proposition, and by the end of in 12 months, we will have completed the analysis and those types of things. By the end of 2015, we would make the recommendations. public makes the decision. The public makes a decision. This goes into a part of the referendum where literally after all the input is made, the public weighs in and says, this is the future we want and this is how we want to go forward in the future. So that was in essence what we spoke to at Thursday morning roundtable. And that general framework is what we talked about also with the editorial.
And part of the thing is of why now, and what are things different, because Larry knows, Onondaga Citizens League did a great study, and it's almost now 9 years ago, but it's the action on it. And why is it now? And it's really, one of the things, this was my part, is I truly believe the stars are aligned. I'm serious about this. Because number one, I mean, just go right down to it, whether it's a mayor and a county executive who certainly don't see eye to eye all the time, but they trust each other. They have put shared purchasing departments together. They have formed Andy's new governmental agency on it. They have co-located their economic development company. They're sharing. Have you ever in your lifetime seen in our county businesses, hospitals, institutions, not-for-profits collaborating, and not just collaborating, proactively looking, how can we work together to make this community better? We're at a really great time. We got the taxpayers who are saying, okay, we love the quality, we like the quality of services, but we know we can't sustain them. You can't just keep doing our tax base, which is some of the highest real estate taxes in the United States on it. And then what Rob just sort of slipped in there, but can you imagine 3,000 counties in the United States? That laundry list there is 1,817 units are in our county. Per capita, we're 9th in the country of governmental units. So there's gotta be some way for us to streamline. We have been very, very careful not to use the word consolidation, because as far as I'm concerned, there's no preconceived. We're an open slate here, what we come up with, and different communities across the United States have done it. And
Steve McCormick and who was the plant manager, kind of Steve Richmond, they recognized that the unions were going to lose some jobs out of that when you wanted to modernize, but they were looking to the future and they were looking at economic opportunity of keeping that plant in the Syracuse area and understanding how important that is. So I'm not afraid to controversy, as Jim Wall said, that you're going to have arguments. I mean, I've had to balance public unions and private unions for 7 years now as president, and it's not always an easy task. A lot of times they're diametrically opposed. But when all is said and done, we all do have to work together. I think it comes to consensus. And every one of the people I represent, they do work and live in this community. Their kids go to school here. They pay property taxes and sales taxes and income taxes. And they too are concerned about the future, not only for themselves, but for their children. And I think that, I have to report back to them. I have a responsibility that 40,000 people and what this commission is going to represent. I think what the importance is. So that's why, I agreed to do this. And I think it's important to hear everybody's comments. Where do we go from here? How do we make it?
And it's really important too that people that we should be talking to. See, how do we, so that we get their input on this. That's, I think, one of the biggest things is for us, and it's probably skipping all the way down to 7, and we only got about 20 more minutes or so.
I just wanted to say that, all you gotta look at your towns and you gotta look at your villages, a lot of them are organized. And there are concerns, when we consolidate police department, I know you don't want to use the word consolidation, but, there's concerns about that, pushback the other way. Ultimately, if it's up to the voters, then it's up to the voters, but, those are concerns and those are questions, and those are some of the things that they're looking for. What are our recommendations going to be? Because they do touch them.
Yeah, just a couple of points. I think we got to keep in mind now that the legislation that Governor Cuomo got passed when he was Attorney General does give the power to the people now to start this consolidation, and they haven't. Does it, do they not understand it? Is it too difficult? Or are they okay paying, more? I think that's something we got to keep in mind, that I don't think they understand the process, but there's not enough people either. I haven't really seen that. There's a couple instances, but no one's really jumped out and tried to do this tax and they want to save money. And if we can show by doing some efficiencies here and there, and maybe it's consolidation, maybe it's just sharing services, that would provide some savings. Also, just to keep in mind as we go forward, although consolidation is a scary word, consolidation doesn't have to be top to bottom. Consolidation can go bottom up, because there are some services in the town and villages that we think we do better than the county or city, and the county or city use services that are better than some of us. So we got to keep that in mind. It's a food.
Right, and streamlining is all different things, shared services all the way up to mergers or metropolitan government. I mean, it's got the whole range, and that's where we have all of that available to us. But I think it's really key is what you're saying. It just, we're trying to find, and this hopefully with all these facts, we can't do anything until we find that have data. And that's the most important thing that we have to go on first of all, because that's gonna drive a lot of how we think and how we look at what our vision's gonna be, is because of the data. So, but some of that data has to come from the people that are in the trenches, for the people that are in these governmental units, besides the people on the corners and in their homes and everything like that. So I think that this public outreach and engagement efforts is the whole key in the beginning, besides having a consultant working on all the facts, data. We need to do something, and that's us, is this part number 7.
And part of that, I think we need to instill in the residents that this savings, I mean, they want instant gratification. That's not necessarily possible for what we're doing, but 5 or 10 years from now, it is possible. So I think they need to understand that as well.
I think,
Sorry. I said yes to being on this commission because Neil called me.
we were very strategic.
I said yes because I really love this community, and I think we have a very good community, but we can become a great community. And my hope is by working to create a better future, we're not only talking about cutting costs, which is very dear to my heart as a business owner, but we may find efficiencies that may enable us to invest in creating a place where people want to come. Because right now we are losing jobs. There are people leaving here. The cost of doing business in our state is among the highest. I compare doing business here to doing business in North Carolina, and I think all of you know the difference. And so I would love for my business to continue to be here, to grow here, for my children to feel that they want to send their children to school, they want to remain here, and they want to invest in this community. I want to be able to attract people from all over the country and all over the world and say, come to this region because we afford you an opportunity for growth. We have the best educational facilities, we have great medical facilities, we have recreational facilities. We're a place where everybody wants to come to. So my vision for this is that we do create a system that enables us to conduct our business that will compare positively with other parts of the country and will even leave us something to invest in creative things that will say we're a destination. Come visit us. And then once you come and visit, come live here and invest and create a future together. That's why I actually want to join.
Great, wonderful. Okay,
I'll second that.
I think we'll all like to second that one as a motion. Murph, just give us a little direction because I don't want to, we told people that they would.
In the packet is a grid. If you would all just take, commission members especially, take a few minutes to verify the information, in particular, all of the title, et cetera, that you want to use, and email address that you prefer us to use to contact you, as well as a phone number. I know there's a variety of phone numbers, but in particular, if you can provide a phone number that if we were to some reason have to, for instance, cancel today because of weather or water main problem or something, we would have a way to reach you all within a timely manner. We also will discuss, but I think we'll do it by email because I know we're pressed for time. We want to get to 7. A meeting schedule going forward, and we'd like to look at setting up something for at least 6 months, realizing that there's maybe a little bit of fluidity in there based on consultant availability, when people want to meet. But we will send a proposed meeting schedule in the next few days for a majority rule effort. And that leads me to our next conversation, which is where to hold our meetings. And I am very grateful to Mark for hosting our first meeting. And I think there are other opportunities just amongst the commission members of places for us to also meet. But I'm cognizant, I wasn't when we got here and talked to Karen, the village clerk. There's 2 phone lines into this building, and so if we were to set up a bridge, we would use up the phone line for the village hall, which is not really what one of our goals would be. So we
Maybe all the employees would like it.
right, Karen might like it. Mark wouldn't. So we would be looking at being able to provide settings in the future where if you are not able to be with us, you can at least bridge in addition to a full IT effort, which we're going to try to explore between videotaping, audio taping, live streaming would be really fun, webinars, GoToMeeting, all of the things that I know a lot of you are probably already familiar with, but we need to sort of figure out the best vehicle for us to use going forward. That'll all be in the next week or
Can I ask a question? Do you want us to circle the telephone numbers that would be in case of an emergency?
That would be great.
The like cancel a
But
meeting
like
or
we have to
something?
cancel or there's
Out of
something.
whatever telephone numbers you're putting down,
Just
circle
so
the one
we-
that's the most important.
We reach it, yeah, that would be great. And then,
Sure.
oh, I'm sorry, yeah, I thought that it was going to be, I'm sorry.
No, we'll just
So
fill
we
in.
can-
Oh, Mark, that was great, thanks. And I'll touch quickly on the other things which will be ongoing. Travis and myself and Carol Dwyer at Maxwell were starting conversations about building what we're going to probably call a commission modernization library in the cloud or some other server place. There are many, many, many volumes of documents on the subject relative to our own municipalities, in addition to external municipalities. And we'd like to be able to provide that information to all of you and the public in a place where everybody could go if they're interested and link into the reports, studies, the best practices, etc. That's obviously going to take some time, and we've got to kind of figure out how to do it and who can help us do it, but that is a goal. Additionally, we're looking at a goal that we're creating, so I welcome everybody to send me, please, their ideas. Speakers going forward both for the commission and speakers going forward for our public part of our work. Examples that we've already got, there's a couple of professors at Cornell who are doing a lot of work in this area. There are obviously our very own Maxwell professors who have done and are continuing to do work. There's David Bing, who is the former mayor of Detroit, but has a relationship here, who may be a great speaker to hear like his personal experience in the Detroit situation, and if wishes were fishes, what would you wish for? And there's, I was meeting with a Maxwell professor last week who said, it would be fun to do an all-star Maxwell Day. So we have a whole lot of alumni out there in local governments who are actually working, doing things. And if we could bring everybody back, it would be great for our students. And I said, well, it would be great for us too, to hear it. So there's a lot of parts that we're trying to put together to help you guys and also move the public side of it. And I think my last piece that I'm taking away from today is I think we should add a second public engagement piece, and I'm stealing her term, but a listening tour for us, for the commission, for the people who are going to have to do the work and possibly make the recommendations, etc. Mark Olson, Mark McCultra, as president of the village mayors and vice president of the town supervisors, have both offered opportunities for us to meet at their monthly or quarterly meetings when it's good for us, good for them, to talk with them, to talk with the village mayors and the town supervisors. And I'm hearing that we want to, I believe, well, I think we need to anyway, but we want to create a list of potential meetings that we, the commission, you, the commission, can be doing in this sort of, dark period while the data is being collected, and we're not but we can actively work certainly.
Well, we're
Melanie's point.
collecting data
Right.
at the same time.
That's right,
Yeah.
and to Melanie's point, to Sharon's point, and everybody's made the point, you know, let's get out there and hear what everybody else, what they think, you know, and it is not this process was never designed to exclude anybody, nor was it ever designed to be critical. I promised Mark and Mark, we're not here to do any harm, and they're gonna hold me to it, I'm sure.
Well, there's a person in every one of all those 1,817
Right.
governmental units who have thought at some point, you know what, I have a great idea
Yeah.
how we could be more efficient.
Yeah.
You know, that we just need to hear them. And they've been thinking about it, they've been living it,
Right.
they can tell us.
So-
They know, and they just, we just sort of, we've always had so much work, we haven't had a chance to do this.
Exactly.
But this is how we think it would work. And you know what, we've worked with the 2 town supervisors for years, this is working great. Trying to spread the wealth, best
Yep.
practices.
Yep.
That's the kind of stuff we need to hear.
So send us your suggestions for speakers, you know, we'll continue to develop it as we move along and share it with you all, and I think things like, you know, for instance, the David Bing meeting would be great for us, but obviously great for a public setting as well, or one or both. So there's a variety of options going forward that we're exploring, and we'll continue to bring to you. Okay. Questions? Okay. Thank you.
Just one final point to add on the sort of organizational side. We will set up a listserv that's specifically for this commission and the staff members. So we'll get that so that you all have an easy way without having to type in 27 different email addresses to communicate with each other and to communicate with staff and ask for the types of support you need. So we'll get that set up here in the next couple of days.
Yep.
And in terms of staff, Kevin and Lori and Dan and Kathy, does everybody have all their contact information?
We'll make sure that everyone does.
We'll delineate that in the list.
All right, well, it's because, people wake up in the middle of the night and have this great
Right.
idea. You know, we won't call you in the middle of the night, but just so that.
Some of you will.
I'm not promising that. Wait a minute.
I know exactly who will.
I can only speak for myself. I will not call anybody unless it's an absolute emergency. But anyway, so we want to.
Don't be alarmed.
Catherine answers his phone.
There's also a need to have a public outreach. We've all talked about broadening the net. And so Judy Mower has offered to participate with a subcommittee that will help to organize this public outreach and how to plan a budget for it. So if any of you would like to participate with Judy on that committee, the public outreach committee, let one of our folks know that you're interested. And I think that will be a really exciting committee to be on, because really that's what gives us credibility at the end of the day.
And we will be asking you, as these forums or whatever they are, who wants to go, because I think it's important that we show our faces at as many of these forums, get-togethers, whatever is possible too. I mean, that they want to be speaking to the people who are going to try to be making decisions.
Once I'm done with the RFP
You have an active participant.
Oh, yeah, really, give this woman a star.
But one other point, I went to the website and, one of my missions here is to make sure populations that typically don't hear about information get to hear it. When you go to the website and it says join your movement, the first question I'm gonna get is, what does that mean? So when a person inputs their information, what happens? They start getting email or what happens?
Now, right now, as it is, what we're hoping is anybody who's got an interest at this point, because as we found out today, the scope is still being determined.
Right.
But anyone who's got an interest is able to step forward and say, I'm interested in this. They will immediately receive an email thanking them for expressing that interest and saying that future communications will be disseminated.
So presumably that means public meetings, updates to our virtual library.
Exactly.
Links to different events that, if we're having a speaker, we're promoting it, et cetera.
Thank you.
And I'm very hopeful that our meeting with the editorial board today, though, that we're going to get some support from them to get out in the public. And that's why it's really important that we come to a conclusion at some point before I'm 6 feet under, you know? So that's really important, because of people are gonna be looking for this, so we can't just drag it out over a lifetime.
And one thing to add for everyone who's here, just as the commission itself is in its very early stages here, the vision of that website is very much in its early stages. It is going to be much more robust. I've heard a number of things, for example, today, in terms of functionality that we are certainly going to need to add to that site. And in designing the site, the idea was that we were going to build on what starts as almost a very basic placeholder and turn it into a robust resource for people as more information and more activity becomes part of what's going on with this commission.
On that point, one of the things that I think I've learned over the years is that if you invite people to participate and they try, and it doesn't work, they're gone. So if we're gonna invite people to come to our website, either we gotta tell them when they come on, we're not ready yet, come on back in 2 weeks or 3 weeks, or something to that effect, so that they don't just get turned off.
And while I respect that you met with the editorial board, there's a lot of other media outlets that reach other segments of the community that we need to highlight, and figure out how we're going to engage
Well,
them
and that's
as a
what-
part of this conversation.
And that's what we need from all of you sitting around, is where are the communities and groups of people we need to get to, right?
And I just want to put in a word for those who happen to be in particularly in our high schools, that we think about reaching out to those who are in those years, because they're making decisions about where they're going to go to college, where they're going to spend their careers, and where they're going to spend the rest of their lives. And unless we start to talk to them in those years and let them know that we're interested in what they're thinking as well, what does the community mean to them, and what could a community offer in those particular years? I know we did that, Ann was with me when we did that several years ago, and the students had incredibly insightful responses. So I think it would be, they will be heartened to know that they're part of also welcoming their ideas.
Just for outreach, just in case the conversation happens before I can get there. Also for either the website as well as meetings for visually and hearing impaired individuals. The website, if you're visually impaired, is not going to give you much information. It's not a
ADA compliance.
ADA compliance.
Just offer sort of from an administrative standpoint, as we're trying to enable this work, that kind of feedback is really, we want it, because we're trying to keep up with all of this at the same time. So those suggestions, Ann this morning pointed out that we didn't have a Twitter hashtag. Right? Is that everybody's point?
Right. Good, Ron.
So, so we will keep up with your suggestions. That's our job. So please don't hesitate to let us know the alternate media outlets that we should be reaching out to and talk to. We don't always know them proactively, but we're pretty good at keeping up.
And I think this conversation today will just lead to a lot of thoughts on your, coming through your head when you have 1 second for your down moment. Really communicate it, write it down, and then get it to somebody, okay? Because that's what's going to be the key, is the brain power here, to making sure that we really engage the whole community. It's a big community.
Our work here is done. At least it's begun. It's begun.
It's begun.
It's the end of the beginning. It's 2 o'clock. We've set precedent. 2-hour meeting. Great work. And
thanks everybody for
Thanks,
participating.
everybody.
Hi.